Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to Portsmouth Coffee Talks morning show. And I'm James Lim Overton, and I'm here with co-host Thomas the Colonel Chapman. And hopefully, Leah will come on later. She was having some internet problems, so hopefully they'll be rectified before we end the show today. But anyway, we're here, and we're gonna. Good morning, Colonel. How you doing?
Morning, good morning. Yes.
Yes. And we are here, and we wanted to start off with the theme for this show was are we paying attention? And we use that theme because it's a lot going on that's right in our faces, and we're going to talk about some of those things. Even Ramaswamy, I think that's his name. We'll get into that too. How he, you know, you know, how he was told right in his face that he would. The person he was interviewing said, "I wouldn't vote for you because you're Indian," you know, and that's more in your face. But anyway, we'll talk about it later. I want to start out the conversation with right here in Virginia, where we are based, and about Shenandoah County. Shenandoah County School Board voted last Friday to restore the names of three Confederate officers to their schools, overturning something that happened uh, last year. I mean, not last year, 4 years ago, that was kind of sparked by the George Floyd murder. You know, when people start saying, wow, maybe we need to do something with these statues and the names on these schools. So a lot of school boards voted to change the names. And I think probably because it was such an uproar behind the George Floyd thing, and people saw that happen in live TV, people, those that didn't agree just put up with it, or they just didn't have the votes. But since then, and we talked about this a lot on the show, Colonel, about paying attention. We want people to pay attention to the national electorate, but paying attention to your local politics. And we notice a trend of the conservatives, Confederates, or whatever you want to call them, Republicans, trying to take over these local offices like the school board and city council. And this is probably exactly what happened in Shenandoah County in up in near Northern Virginia, where since 4 years ago, the composition of the council has changed, and they voted to turn the names of the schools back that were turned away from Stonewall Jackson, Lee, and one school, Ashby Lee, named after all Confederate generals, and they voted 5-1 to turn it back to those names in direct opposition against most of the people that were at the school board and meeting, who were mostly white, uh, objected to it. But evidently, they already had their mind made up that they were going to take this back, and so the objective of them taking over the school board and getting to the point where they can reverse some of these things. That's going to be probably the trend that we talked about, as I mentioned on this show many times, and that's why we title, are we paying attention to these things that are happening right in our face? And looking at the article, I found out that it's happened some other places. And it's happening in these smaller, I don't want to call them rural places, because Shenandoah County is not rural, but it's Northern Virginia, where a lot of, which is the area that sort of put Youngkins into office, up in the Northern Virginia part, all those little counties up in there, that's what carried him over. So you knew what kind of politics was going to happen there. Colonel, I know you saw the story, and I know you agreed that that's something that we really focused on and talked about on this show, about paying attention to what's going on in your local politics and who's running and how they're trying to make those changes there and trying to make changes from the bottom up.
hmm Well, you mentioned the how Youngkin got into office. Yes, they are trying to change it, not just because they want to change it because of the racism and the racist that they are. And it was 4-1, and the only candidate, the only school board member that voted no was a black member of the school board, the only black school board member. So they're trying to get these hot button issues, especially out in Shenandoah is a rural county, and trying to gin up things so to get their people out to the polls so they can vote just not Trump in, but anybody of their any of the other Confederate racists that are coming forward. But you have to look at it in a grander scheme, that with the rise of Trumpism, racism, and turning into, well, actually it is Jim Crow 2.0. So they're trying to turn back the clock, and we have to be wise to that. But people need to just stand up and look at it, and then you have to call it out. This is not overt, but it is outright racism that they are doing. Racism and racist policies that they're doing. And at the guise of throw a hot button issue out there to bring our voters to the polls, because anybody supports that kind of a move are racist. But that's all it is. And I wish the black athletes, you could start with them, refuse to go play football, basketball, baseball, whatever. Just don't play. White athletes, don't play in those 3 schools. Just don't play. I doubt if you got an NFL quarterback or somebody that you have a right to move, go somewhere else out of the district. Just don't play in those schools. And those high school students that are being affected, you have a right to vote. Go down and register and put the school board out of their misery. Take your actions in your own hands. Stop complaining. Do some action. You don't have to march, because marching don't do a jack, but you have to go down there and vote in November and put them out.
Yeah, and pay attention to who's running and what, and question them to the point of finding out these things. As blunt as they want to throw things in our face, we have to do the same thing. Ask them those hard questions like, well, how do you feel about monuments or the changes that were made, taking down the monuments, even though that's in the past? Sometimes we forget about what's already happened and think, okay, that's done. We did that, pat ourselves on the back and say that's done. But whatever happens politically can be reversed, if the composition of the people who make those decisions changes. So anything that happens, nothing is permanent if it's voted on by a body that's elected body. So it's up to us to make sure that elected body, or whether elected, those people you put in the office, where they're coming from and how they feel about certain things. Talk about how they feel about banning books and things like that. Even if it doesn't, you don't think it affects your local area. But look what's happened. People that didn't think this would come up again, after it was changed, most people would think, okay, we got rid of that. That'll never come back again. Who would have thought that they would come back to rename after everything that's going on, to rename the schools back to the Confederate traitors of our country, and put them back on the schools of our children.
And they are traitors. And why would anybody? But it's weak-minded people want to keep the old South going. They want to keep that legacy out. The people that tried to overthrow the country way back in the day, but that same lineage is trying to do it. They tried to do it in doing the last election in 2020, where Trump lost, and they're trying to do it again in 2024. Not trying to protest, but they are trying to overthrow our democracy. And anybody, I looked at the Trump had 80,000 people up there in New Jersey. Most of them were out of town, out of state. Some were paid. A lot of them were paid people to come on into that rally. The same
Yeah,
one you see.
and when you talk about people watching those rallies, you know, his base is going to stand there and listen to whatever he says. But you know, if you want to make an argument for him, those that feel like you know that's the only choice, that's the lesser of two evils, like some people say, you know, listen to what he's saying. Does he talk any policy? Does he talk, you know, except for what he's going to do when he gets in office about retaliating, you know?
Yeah.
But any policy changes, anything that's going to help you, that's going to help your community, that's going to help. I mean, all of it is a 90-minute rant.
Yep.
About, you know, how unfair things are, and just like we all know how the strategy of repeating the same thing to make it true.
Yes.
So, and that's all his rallies are about. And I read something about half the people were leaving the rally. I think a lot of people go there out of curiosity, and he stands there for 90 minutes just talking about nothing, and people were leaving, you know, while he was still speaking. So I guess I'm saying that to say, if you really listen and pay attention to what he's saying, you might have a change of, do I really want this guy that has no substance, that's not showing me anything he wants to do for the country, except make himself a victim. You know, I'm in court for you. I'll go to jail for you. No in the world he wants to go to jail, but I'll go to jail because he's convinced that they're not, you know, and because this is something that's never happened before. It's why, you know, it's taking so long. Anybody else would have, with that many contempt charges, would have been in jail by now. You know, most people, the first contempt, 30 days or 3 days or 2 hours or whatever, you know, after the first contempt. But 10, you know, and still warning. But the judge is in a pickle as far as saying, wow, this never happened before. I got to put president that might be president or a former president in jail. And the logistics for the Secret Service and all that stuff, you know, hell, you know, I mean, he's in jail, you know, how you just, I mean, he's going to be isolated. How more protected can you be in jail? You know, he's not going to be in the general population. So in jail, he's still going to be protected. You know, he's not going to be behind, but it's going to be, you know, people don't realize what people like him, what kind of confinement they are in.
Let him wear his
It's
orange
nothing like the jail you see on any movie or TV or any documentary. Nothing like that. That he will be not in something like that. He will be in a luxury confinement.
But, you know, he needs to be treated like any citizen in this country.
You're right.
Put him down there in Rikers, and he'll have his own cell. Secret Service can guard his hall. And when he walks in, he'll be an empty hall, but let him wear the orange jumpsuit. Let him eat in the mess hall that's down there. He can have his own corner or whatever next to it, and let him eat. Because the justice system is bent over backwards for him. You know, we have a crooked judge down there in Florida that basically is a Trump judge or nominated for Trump. It's already said that she wants to. The deal is she wants to get a higher appointment to the Court of Appeals or to the Supreme Court. So she is putting off everything to have that case not go to the jury. And some are saying she's looking for an excuse to throw the whole case out. But we always know that she is the most crook number one judge out there. The second case, his case down there in Georgia, the state has done everything to stop Fani Willis from trying this case. They know where it's at the Court of Appeals, and there's no rhyme or reason why they just cannot start this trial with that going through the judicial system. But if they pull her off, basically this case drops out and he gets not charged for another crime of trying to steal the election down there in Georgia. Now then you have the trial in Washington where he's trying to say he has immunity, 100% immunity. Ludicrous. Nobody is above the law, but we have a crooked Supreme Court that has 3 of his justices up there that have tried to find any way to delay this till after the election, so hopefully he would win and this case just drops off, because the Justice Department will be directed to just drop the case. So it goes back to show you that yes, we have two justice systems, one for them and one for the crooks, and Trump and his acolytes are in the crook category. And then so anytime that any of these Confederates or Republicans to say they're for law and order, they're for the black and the blue, you have to say they are not. They are not for justice in this system. Look at, they have tried to defund, meaning take all the money out away from all 3 of the big cases across the country, all the federal money and all the state money away from these cases. Just try to stop that. That tell you what's going on in this country. And they don't need to be in office. There's not a Republican out there that needs to be in office. Look at Lindsey Graham with all that mess he talks about on the weekend about the state of Israel. And you have the Senator Scott down there in Florida who's running for re-election, that has had one of the biggest Medicaid frauds in the state of Florida, who got off with it. He's talking about because President Biden is withholding aid, lethal aid to Israel against international law, which is in his right, which is different from what Trump did. He's talking about let's go to articles of impeachment. They're looking for any excuse to impeach, to try to throw a smokescreen of what's happening in this country. And it is a shame. People need to wake up.
Yeah, and you're watching Portsmouth Comfort Talks morning show, and we're trying to answer the questions. Are we paying attention? And if you don't believe, it's a lot of while you're taking a break in between watching those entertainment shows, which is you need that to figure out what's happening in Hollywood and everything, and watching those shows like that. Take a little time sometime to surf the internet or your TV and look at the different news outlets and come across some of the stories or some of the people, because there are people out here that's just saying stuff out there you never thought they would say. There was a ex Republican candidate, Ramaswamy, has a podcast, and he invited Ann Coulter on his show. And he so very wants to be a part of that connection, but she pretty much on his show told him, it's like a white society. I mean, we don't have room. I like your policies, but the only reason I wouldn't vote for you is because you are Indian. And she said that right on. Imagine going, somebody coming on here, Colonel, and said, I don't like you, Colonel, because you are African American, and on his show told him that, and he still sat there and didn't push back on it. And she said some more things, that were, I thought, were degrading to him as a person, and saying that some people that coming from immigrants, shouldn't be president. Now, this guy was born here. His parents were immigrants, but he was born here, so he had a right to be. But she pretty much said, between the lines, she didn't want anybody like that. She wouldn't have voted for him, even though he's a naturalized, born here American citizen. She would not vote for him because he was Indian. And, this is going on, excuse me, this is going on everywhere. And we have the opportunities to look at all these different news feeds, and to get the true story by looking at different places.
Mhm.
They have one news station that of them watch, which is Fox, and everything that comes out of that to them is the gospel. We
Yes.
have the opportunity to look at a lot of different feeds. If you don't believe what's here, you can look at CNN. If you want verification, you can look at NSNBC, or just look around and see if the same things are being said. Because we need to know how these people are not hiding behind sheets or doors or walls. They coming right out and saying how they feel about certain things, and to tell this guy to his face that she wouldn't have voted for him because he was Indian and he did not push back on it. It says a lot about him and how bad he wants to be in that circle that they won't let him in. They'll let him, they invite him as a guest, but he'll never be a part of that circle which he so desperately wants. And that's what she told him in his face.
Well, and it go. That's what you find out with the Confederate Party. No matter what you are and how you espouse to be just like them, you are still a person of color or black. They still got you classified as black, and you're a threat. You have to go. You got to go. You are still black, no matter what.
And
And
I
so
think
he found out on real time.
I think Scott has gotten those messages too, but that just shows you how this thing is all about power and money. It's not about what can I do for the constituents that he put me here. It's about power and inclusion. As they talk about us with the inclusion, all these people want inclusion into the Republican world, or not the Republican world, into Trump world. So they so definitely want that. They'll sit there and take or look like fools, in order to say, and probably in the back of their mind, they probably know that this is crazy. This is not the right thing, And you mentioned the senator earlier, his talk, what he's saying about the Israel situation and things like that. They pretty much saying go there and just blow everybody up. He was comparing that
Yeah.
to when we went to Japan. In order to solve that, we just dropped a bomb over there. Different times, different situations, but that's what he was implying. If we could do something like that, that would be the end to all of that. Just dropping it and just killing people.
Yeah.
That's
And
not Israelites.
And why would we want to even have him? We should have just bleeped over his on national news. Just bleep over and put a fool on it in front of Lindsey Graham, because he'll say or do anything to stay relevant. That's a senator has not passed any legislation, written any legislation since he's been there, and he's been over there 20 years in the Senate, riding and dining and made a fortune down there in South Carolina. And people vote for him. Even the black people vote for him down there. And he'd like to put them back in slavery himself. I'm just wishing that he'd just come straight. The only thing he'll do for me is just to come out like he is. And come out straight. Because he's still in hiding. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's crazy, and even the antics of Marjorie Taylor Greene trying to oust the second Speaker of the House, and the only things what saved him was the Democrats. And anybody say, why did the Democrats save him? Because that would have put a stop. That it would have been a temporary stop to Congress. They're not doing anything anyway, but Democrats are trying to do something, and that we would have had to stop. We wouldn't have had a Speaker of the House. And for how long it took for them to replace him, and nothing would have gotten done. So the Democrats were the savior there, and keeping them from doing that once again, because a single vote or a single act that he did that they didn't like. That faction. Maybe that faction is shrinking. People are saying, this is too crazy. Within 2 years, you're gonna within a calendar year, you're gonna oust the second Speaker of the House and slow down and stop the 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 actions of our United States Senate and Congress.
Well, and you reason why the Democrats didn't want him to lose, because one, be careful what you ask for one. The next one would be even more crazier. And you don't want another one of those MAGA people. Johnson is a racist himself, he's a anti-race, he's a homophobic. But he is a MAGA guy that's trying to survive, and the guy that comes after him, and it will be a guy because they don't even consider women in the Republican Party. They don't would be even worse, and we wouldn't get a chance to do what's right for the country. They would have shut down the country over some of the issues, because if people have to understand, the House of Representatives is where you vote for, and they keep the budget going, the money's flowing, and that's what they're trying to do. All of a sudden they want to cut, they get in power and they want to cut the budget, and they cry about deficits only when we have a Democratic president. That's the only time they talk about deficits.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only time. So if you care about deficits, then write the money out of your district and say, I won't take any of that federal money in my district. They won't do that, but they do say I'll vote against it. And then when the money comes in, they stand at the podium saying, "I brought this money to you."
Do you think the messaging is getting better? You think the messaging is getting better coming out of the Biden administration? We're approaching the mid May, and it's like 100. When you put it down in days, it's 100 and some days before the election. And when you put it like that, when you put it in months, it sounds like it's a long way. When you put it in days, it really sounds, wow, 100 some days. And do you think the messaging is getting better, or what do you think needs to be done? Do they need to be using Kamala Harris, Vice President Kamala Harris, a little more? Because you got this thing now, Morehouse, fractions there are rejecting or don't want the president to come there to give a speech, but they invited him. And that happens, months or a year ahead of time. They invited him, but now the issues with Israel, so people don't want him there. So what do you think? I don't know if the message is getting better or it's not. It's not where it should be. I'll put it that way. What do you think?
I'm disappointed in Morehouse. President Biden has done more for HBCU schools than any president in our lifetime. That includes Barack Obama. He has done more for them. He's pumped more money into those HBCU schools. And I normally give money, and I give money to Morehouse doing my piece that I for my giving every year. Mm-hmm. But Morehouse check from me this year. That's how disappointed I am.
Because I heard somebody saying, somebody trying to defend those people that didn't want him to come there, say, well, they think he's just politicizing something and coming there to, because it's a political season. But as I said a little while ago, he was invited by Morehouse to come there, and it would have been worse if he had turned them down. So now that you invited them, so I hope they, I don't know, have they changed their mind? Because I thought Morehouse was kind of holding out and staying true to that invitation that they sent to him.
they have not changed their mind. They're waffling on it, but people need to understand. And the president could normally, in normalcy, they only accept to the academies. They pick one or two collegiate universities or colleges to give speeches, graduation. And there's only a handful, less than 5 graduations that they do across the country. And to be picked is a great honor. And so if you're going to throw that great honor away, why should I support you anyway? Not me as a citizen. So I've cut them out of my giving piece. I've cut them out because they don't have the wherewithal to or the gumption to stand up to the religious right, who is behind half this mess.
Yeah, you don't see Liberty having any problems with who they bring. I mean, they bring who speaks their message. But and
Liberty,
and I hope, I hope it's no protest behind the debate that's coming to Virginia State. It's supposed to come to Virginia State with the president and Trump.
Trump's not going to debate. Trump's not going to debate.
You don't think he even show up?
He's not going to debate. He's off the game, but he's not going to debate. It's just like he's saying, "I want to testify in these in court." He's not going to do it. He talks the game, but he will not debate. So you can prepare for it, but it's not going to happen. I would seriously doubt that it's going to happen.
Yeah, what would he talk about it? What would he talk about except the same things he talks about at his rallies about him being a victim and everything like that?
Being a victim, and the only policy his policies haven't changed from the first time he was a president, is to try to destroy the previous Democratic policies, deregulation and tax cuts for the rich, and that is it. There's no new policies out there other than he wants to put excuse me.
Yeah, bless you.
Deporting everybody of color on steroids, which will exacerbate the problem. You can just look at who's out here building these houses and construction. Excuse me again.
Bless you again.
It's going to be crazy. He's going. This country will never be the same if he gets back in office.
Yeah. Speaking of colleges,
start day one. Go ahead.
Speaking of colleges, we're seeing a lot of protests on the colleges, and kind of takes you back to the '60s and going forward too. Where a lot of things happen or start on college campuses as far as protests. And back in the '60s, Vietnam War was an issue, a big issue, and colleges across the country were protesting that. And a lot of things, there was a lot of situations like Kent State where they sent in the National Guard for these students, and you hopefully we learn from that. That's not the way to handle students, with these guys that are part-time soldiers that might be trigger happy. But now we're seeing a lot of that happening now because of what's going on in Israel and Gaza. And some of the things, and you had some thoughts on that, Colonel, about the infiltration of the students of some of the campuses by other people that were not students, that are making things a little worse for the students that might have a legitimate right to protest, and a different way they might have protested if they weren't having these people coming in or mixing in and stirring up trouble.
Yeah. A lot of these rebel rousers are on the right. They're Christian right folks that are coming in there trying to stir up trouble. And they're all funded by some way from the religious right to try to make things look bad for against the policies of President Biden. And normally the Republicans would follow the presidency, and they know Biden is right the way he is doing this, but in their zest to or zeal to gain power, they're against it. They're against everything that the president wants to do. And so if they really drill down, and the news people need to drill down, the real press, if you really look at it, who is being arrested and who's behind all this, and you'll see there's a Republican tent behind, or a Republican dollar behind most of these protests across the country.
Yeah, that's crazy. And of course, you're listening to Portsmouth Coffee Talks Morning Show, and we're talking about, are we paying attention? Are we paying attention to the political climate and what's going on around us, especially locally and nationally? The things that are happening right in your face, and if you're not paying attention, you're going to miss it. If you're watching, most of your 100% of your time is spent on other shows and shows that inform you about what's happening, you're going to miss these little, and I can't even call them subtle things that are happening, because it's so in your face. People are just saying it right out. And, I and some people are consumed about Trump's trial, and even, but what I guess no cameras allowed in there. But what gets on when he comes out of those trials and makes those little rants, a lot of them are against the judge's orders. Many times he walks a fine line with that, but most of his things that he does while he's in court. Even making little comments and things like that, just pushing the justice system to the edge. But what you see on the news shows is him coming out there talking about how unfair it is, and he's just going through the justice system like anybody else. And Colonel, you always talk about his two justice system, but this is one half of that justice system that tries to work and tries to do the right thing, and he's in that, but he's saying that's unfair. And most people watching it saying, that's unfair. Why should he be going through that? And anybody that's been through it on a much lower level than he's going through right now probably can tell you. And I hope those people that see that and been through it for less than that and had to suffer are voters, and they go out and vote. Or I hope they're telling people in their circle and even outside of their circle, man, what I went through, man, I stole an orange out of the grocery store, and I spent 5 years in jail. and that's extreme, but some of those things like that happen. That we can, if you really look at it, it's extreme, and he's just getting away with everything. And the news reporters stand out there, wait for him to come out of the court and rant about how unfair it is and how it's Biden's fault that he's in jail, and nothing is further from the truth that comes out of his mouth.
Yes, it is. And but we're seeing it in real time. It is in real time.
Seeing it in real time.
And we're seeing
it in your face.
Yeah.
So how and I guess we come on here and we talk like this because we feel a certain responsibility to whoever's listening, and it's on. And by the way, if you're watching this on our Facebook or YouTube page, please like, subscribe, and comment and share this information. We just want to get the conversations talking beyond us talking and get you thinking and talking about what you see or what's happening in your face. And Colonel, before we go any further, why don't you let them know how they can support us, if so we can keep these conversations going.
Yeah, because one, what you're hearing on this news outlet is you won't hear it on anywhere else. Because if you look at Fox, and I'll use Fox, what they call Fox Network, you can look at how the news is tainted. There is nothing good. They've never said anything good about the Biden administration or anything good about this country, and always behind. That's the Republican station, basically. So if you want truth in media, you can support us. You look at the screen, and you can look how you can donate to us, because we operate, and 100% of the donations going to those going to Portsmouth Coffee Talk goes into keeping us alive, and also we're trying to expand our network and how we're giving it out to the American public. And we can't survive unless you help us to help you. And we give you the information so you can make an informed decision.
Thanks, Colonel. I appreciate that. And let me go back to the lead story we had, talking about the Shenandoah County School Board and what they did in reversing the, people might think, okay, that's an isolated incident. That happened there because it's a rural area. I mean, well, even the metropolitan areas, you can see who's running for office now that probably didn't think about running before. So you have to pay attention to what's going on around you locally too, because it could happen here. It could happen as you think about the statues and how when those statues were erected, well after the Civil War. I mean, they were erected to remind us that there was a Civil War, and they were still heroes to a lot of people. Usually when something like that happens, it comes not too long after a war. You erect something of the great generals and everything. But these statues that many of them been taken down. And I saw something in the state capitol. It's like, I think it's still some some statues up in there, but it's compared to, I think it's about 3 blacks that are being immortalized in statues, and maybe 15 other. I might be wrong on that, but I have to check that. But anyway, just the point of paying attention to what's going on here locally as we think about Hampton Roads, where we are based here. The Coffee Talk is based, and how you really need to pay attention, because elections are coming up. While you're looking at the national election, pay attention to your local elections and the people, like I mentioned before. Make sure you ask those questions that are not normally asked. Hello, Tina Vick. Thanks for watching. Tina Vick, who's a council person for Newport News. She's watching. Hello. And talking about the Hampton Roads area, Tina, and how important it is. And you're up for election this year too, and in Newport News, how important it is for us to just pay attention to our local politics and what's going on, because we could find ourselves in the same situation while we're looking the other way. It's so many distractions these days, stuff that come up that, who cares if Drake and Kendall, if these rappers are beefing, down the road, years from now, you might find out that was all staged, because it helps them sell records. I mean, anytime they beef, their record sales go up, so who cares about that? I don't. I mean, it's good entertainment, but is that important? Is that going to change your life? Is that going to change how people make policies that affect you and your community, your city? Just pay attention. Our title, are we paying attention? And in a lot of instances, I can say, no, we're not paying attention like we should. But even if we're paying attention, we have to follow through by making sure we go to the polls. And not sit on your hands this time and throw your hands up and say, I can't take it. I don't know what to do. It's not going to change. It's not going to make a difference. Well, just sit there and see what kind of difference it'll make when the wrong people, the people that don't have your best interest at heart, get into office and start reversing things. that you fought so
Mm-hmm.
hard to change over the years?
It's not just a reversing thing, it's denying you your rights and also denying you the programs that you should be, that you benefit from. That is the big one. Like I always stayed out, like I was in Pep Boys last week, and I talked to these two young brothers and this one young girl that was there. And I see a group of apathetic young people of color that probably won't go to the polls. But those three people are the first ones that are going to be shut out. They'll be looking for the loan repayment for schools. That is going to stop when Trump comes back into office. They're going to be looking for monies to help for their apartments. Say if they're in Section 8 or any kind of housing assistance, they'll be looking for it. That's going to stop. There's an issue now that they're going to start laying off teachers because the COVID funding ends in September. So there's a nationwide, they're going to be laying off school teachers. And you wonder why that COVID funding cannot, or teach for money for education does not continue. You know why? Because the House votes on, they spend the money, the House of Representatives. Also, your representatives in the House and the Senate in the state appropriate dollars to come back from the federal down to state, down to your cities. And none of them is putting the money out there. So you'll see jobs, teachers being cut, and also those jobs will go out the way. So you see all these new graduates, there won't be jobs for them. And there's a concerted effort to slow down things or to stop things to make things look bad. But when we talk about education, here's the other piece to it. They don't want your kids to be educated. Because keep you dumb, then you are the prime constituent of the Republican Party. You're part of the base if you are uneducated. And there are some that say, "Oh, you can't say that." Yes, I said it. That's the goal of their party.
Yeah, Colonel, I think it's important.
Those who have a college degree higher and see through the nonsense that the Republican Party puts out there. And that's the way it is. That's the statistics, and that is math. And that's why they don't want you educated. Keep your kids dumb.
Yeah, and Councilman Vick is agreeing with you, Colonel. And Colonel, I think it's so important what you do, and you come back and tell us that you do that a lot when you're out there and you see some young folks. Talk to them and find out where they are. Sometimes you might feel like, okay, we're lost, but you never know who you might reach, and they need to understand, what's voted on today. Sometimes you see immediate action, but some votes that are made today, it takes a while for you to see the effects of it. Just like it takes a while for you to see the effects of it. So it's going to affect you more in the future than it is now. You might say, "Oh, well, that didn't hurt me," but 4 years from now, you say, "Wow, by the time the process got moving and everything, now I can see how this is affecting me." So you have to be aware of what's going on, especially our young folks, because if you talk about some of the old folks or the well, we're the ones that's voting. So if you feel like we have too much power, or we're talking too much or saying too much, or we're outdated, well, we're the ones voting, but we won't be around here forever. You have to be preparing yourself to be in a position to push back on all these things that are happening. and you need to be doing it now because it's kind of hard sometimes to reverse things, once they're in place, especially if you're not voting and the same people continue to get in office to maintain status quo. So, young people, I
Well,
hope
you know
that
what?
those people that
Yeah.
go ahead, Colonel. Go ahead.
You have to look up this. I know we sort of center on the presidential because that's when the majority of people come out. They come out every 4 years.
Yeah.
There's a segment of society that only comes out every 4 years, but up and down the ballot, and we let off the program with what's happening in the school board. The school board elections have consequences because if you elect the 4 or 5 people that was on the Shenandoah school board, that you call them out as racist and you put them out, you as a body, those high school students, go down and register. They'll come up, put those folks out because they don't have your best interest in their hands. And then you also look at who's on city council and who's the mayor. They pass a budget. They give a budget to a certain amount to the school board, who has to divvy it up and make things work. But who sits on those boards and also in those elected seats has consequences. So if you say, and I'll go back, if you have a fool on the school board, then you get what? The banning of books. You get renaming of schools back to Confederate generals who are traitors to this country. You don't get any. You also have the stifling of critical thinking. You get rid of the diversity inclusion programs, which are racially tinged, not programs, but they're racially tinged progress that they want to turn back, those races that they don't want to know what's happened in the past. They want to take us back to the good old days, back to the 40s and 50s. When I walked down here, if I saw somebody that didn't look like me, and I got to say yes, ma'am, and no, sir, ma'am, and whatever. And if I look you in the eye, I can be lynched. They want to go back to the good old days. And then you also go back to who's sitting on city council. We have city council. We here in the city of Portsmouth, we have got a couple seats will be open. And have they solidified who's running? Is a due date done?
No, it'll be sometime in the first week of June. First week of June. It's coming up soon where the deadline is, and then you'll know. But right now, it's about 11 candidates. That's right now that
so
have turned in their paperwork. So and that could be problematic, and that's why I mentioned earlier about it's going to be really important to ask those tough questions or ask those questions that are not normally asked. Not those questions that everybody is prepared for, but ask those questions they might not be prepared for that affects you directly. How did they? You got to feel the candidates out. How do they feel about certain things? How would they vote on certain things? There's some hypothetical questions sometimes. That's when you can really weed out where the candidates are coming from. But if they're prepared for the big issues, everybody's going to be prepared for that. So when you have that many candidates, you have to be prepared to really weed out who would be the best candidates for you by going beyond some of the normal questions that most candidates will be prepared to answer. And because you go to those forums and a lot of times everybody has almost the same answer because the question is so broad. So everybody's going to be in favor of funding schools, and that's important. You want to know that too. But you want to ask some other questions. How did you, especially if they are incumbents, you want to ask them, how did you vote on so and so issue? because a lot of times by the time it comes around for election times, we have forgotten that they might have voted against something that happened in our community. So you have to pick those things like that and ask the incumbents how did they vote on certain issues, and then have them answer that. And new candidates, you want to find out how knowledgeable they are of the issues outside of those, like I'm saying, those normal issues that might come up. How do you feel about, be specific in some of the questions you ask them. If they're prepared, they'll be able to answer it, or they'll be able to say, I will check into it and follow up on it. And then you have to follow up and see if they really checked into it. But when you have this many candidates, you really have to, because you can't just say, oh, I like the way they dress, or I sit beside them in church, so I think they'll be a good candidate. And they might be the worst. They might be the good people, but not a good candidate or a good elected official. So you have to make sure, because when you have this many candidates, sometimes the people that might be the best, be in your best interest, might get weeded out because the vote is so saturated.
Well, yeah, it'll be thinned out. And the other thing, it'll be thinned out. And so if I have a block, a base, I may have my church, because I'm the my dad. I'll use an example. I'm a church member. You use the church member thing, and so I got my church. So I have this one block. People don't know me other than in the church, so they vote for me because they're my constituents. Or I came from the hood, and so I want to get that segment of people that came from the same block that I came from. So that is my solid block. And I've been voting against their self-interest all this time. I haven't done a thing for them. But then since I have 11 candidates per se, it'll be thinned out amongst the other folks. And then so that's how I stay in power. And I might even, and then you have to ask the question, you say, why do some candidates, you try to ask them those questions, the hard questions, but they always duck them? Because you won't see them come on hard show, come on places or in forums that they will be asked the hard questions. So you have to look at that.
And taking nothing from the community.
Hard questions.
Taking nothing from the community forums, that they're good too, but usually they're based on that community's interests, and the questions are already, because in the interest of time, they don't want to open it up to, because, it'll go on forever. So they have questions that are picked that might serve the interests of that particular community or that group that's involved, and it's a certain amount of questions that's asked, and so you don't get a chance to ask questions outside of what the planned questions are. So sometimes you have to take it upon yourself to seek down those candidates, or look for shows where the questions are pretty much open. They're not questions that are already prepared, and I understand why that's done, because you have to have control in some of those meetings, because they can get out of hand if you just open it up and let people ask what they want. But you just have to go beyond that. Don't go to the forums, get that information, but go beyond that and check, especially if it's candidates running that you don't know, because it might be somebody that you don't know what might be the best person for you, unless you check into their involvement. Have they been involved in community service, or have they been involved in their community? People fight you on this, but you can't just come from nowhere, I don't think, personally, and say, because I can run, I'm going to run, with no credentials, no background, nothing to show that you have done anything in the community, or you have the true knowledge of how government works, or what the people want. So I support you being able to run because you can, but have a little beef on the bones, when you come there, or if they don't have the beef on the bones, make sure you ask those questions so you can find out about it. But Anyway, we're winding down. Any last comments, Colonel, from?
Yeah, one comment: when you go to the forums, but look at who is the moderator, because the moderator can steer darkness into the truth. So if the moderator is just going to let a politician get up there and say what they want and give a canned answer and does not cut them off and says, okay, I hear the canned speech, but give me some depth.
Mm-hmm.
Then that is a good moderator. So you look at who is moderating it. And just think about that. If you got out there and I got a candidate that's giving you his canned speech and just filibustering stuff, a good moderator would say, okay, I hear that. Cut it off. Answer this question. Bam, 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 bam. And get it short, succinct, and concise, and say, I'm cutting out the nonsense, cutting out the political BS. We want an answer. You voted against this, but you saying on the other end, yes, you brought the money to such and such, but you voted against it. Why? And why are you changing your stance now? And if you get for re-election or to be elected, what are you really going to do? And not just the canned stuff. Give me specifics.
Yeah.
Specifics.
Yeah, I think you're right, Colonel, and especially the moderators. Sometimes they stir questions to the in the favor of the people that they like sometimes. But anyway, and plus with it being so many candidates, those forums, you can get lost in who said what. So if you have platforms like we have here, the last time we did it, we had 2 candidates at a time. So it gave us an opportunity to deal, ask those questions of those 2 candidates that we had on each show, to elaborate on, questions we asked them, or go deep into, as opposed to having 11 or more candidates up there, and you hearing each one of them give the same answer or give an answer that you might miss because it's just so many up there. So if you have platforms like this, offer the opportunities for single candidates or 2 or 3 candidates at a time, where you really can get an opportunity to vet those candidates and look at the host that they asking the right questions, and before you come on, get questions from the audience, that you can throw at these candidates along with the questions that the hosts have. So hopefully we'll do that a lot here after the summer starts, and we're going to be looking, and we'll put this right out there. We're going to be looking for compensation if you want to be on this particular show, because we're going to give you ample time to talk about your platform and then answer our questions by having 1 or 2 candidates on at a time, probably no more than that. So, if you're spending your campaign money else places, this is a good place to come and spend your campaign money. And we'll tell you more about the details as we go along. But that's when we'll find out, because this is a good place to spend your money, because it's going to reach a lot of people. And like I said, it'll give you ample time to discuss your platform and answer those tough questions that the people deserve to hear from you. All right, everybody. Yes. Thanks. We appreciate you being here on Portsmouth Coffee Talks Monday morning show. And remember to like, subscribe, comment, and share this show. Take care, and we'll see you next time. Take care, Colonel.